West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast. West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I'm one half the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, Machel St. Patrick Hewitt, and back from his 80 days around the world, once again, is Father Santokie. Santokie, how you doing?
Yeah, all good, Mash. Back in cold. I mean, it's relatively sunny in England, but for me, back in cold England after a lovely weekend, nice hot Qatar, enjoying that tropical weather, a bit of time by the pool. But, speaking of heat, Mash, one thing heating up at the moment, the West Indies regional title race. We've seen the 5th round of games completed, and we're here to review the action. And I think what it boils down to, Mash, we have 2 rounds left to go. It's a curry chicken battle for the top. Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana Harpy Eagles vying for that title, that elusive title for Trinidad and Tobago. I think it's only right, Mash. The headline match, we saw results in all 4 matches of this round. No massive rain sort of affecting anything. I think it's only right we start with, madness at the Mecca, Kensington Oval, Barbados Pride. They came big and strong. Craig Brathwaite was in the squad. Jonathan Drake's fresh off, his scoring exploits for the side. Roston Chase back in the side. Shai Hope back in the side. Matthew Ford, Jason Holder. It was a strong Barbados side at home at the Kensington Oval, and they lost within 1.5 days, Mash. 86 and 121, bowled out. Trinidad and Tobago with a statement win, an innings and 56 runs. Jaden Seals, Anderson Phillip causing havoc with the ball. And Mash, what are you saying? Could this be the year, 20 years since their last title win? Do Trinidad and Tobago look like they could finally get their hands on the regional trophy this season?
I mean, it looks like it's going to all come down to that final game. I mean, obviously round 6. So just to tell people what round 6 has in store, Guyana travelled to the Leeward Islands. So in fairness, maybe Guyana could come unstuck there. TNT hosts Jamaica in a pink ball night game. So you look at those 2 games and you think, okay, if both those 2 sides come through unscathed, and you'd fancy TNT to come through unscathed against Jamaica, Guyana and Leewards is a bit harder to call, just because it's in the Leeward Islands. But it's all set up, Santokie. It feels like it's all set up for winner takes all in the final round, where I think it's in Trinidad. I think Guyana travel to Trinidad, for the final round, round 7. So obviously Trinidad trying to overcome a 20-year drought. Guyana always win the competition pretty much. They're more Barbados. And they are the 2 standout sides, to be fair, Santokie. They're the only 2 teams in the tournament that look like they can consistently compete with bat and ball, no matter who they're playing, no matter the conditions. Up until now, obviously, Caripierre's been taking all of his wickets at 10 apiece. Yannick Karaya's been taking enough wickets at like 12 apiece. So up until now, Trinidad have been able to be like, well, we'll just spin teams down. And what was quite significant about this victory at the Mecca was that it was just raw pace. Obviously, controlled and disciplined pace. But like you look at the first innings when Barbados were 86 all out, you got Seals taking 2 for 32, Phillip 4 for 36, Joshua James, who's finally now in and around the proper setup in Trinidad, 3 for 8. And then even when you look at the second innings, Seals, another 2 wickets, 2 for 50. Anderson, Phillip, 2 for 38. Joshua James, another 3 for 16. And then Caripierre spinned a couple tail enders down at the end, right? So the Trinidad team looks so well balanced. I mean, you look at their batters, like you wouldn't say that they've got any big star names. Yeah, there's Amir Jangu, Jason Mohammed, Josh Da Silva, but there's no. It might be with Trinidad that what they've benefited from is the collective. Like there's no, like, obviously Jaden Seals is star boy, but there's no like regional like franchise star player in there, if you see what I mean. It's just a collective of 11 players who are all probably coached very well by Riyad Emrit, led very well by Josh Da Silva, who all seem to just have a clear mission in mind. But Santokie, Seals and Phillip are due to go to England. They've got county deals, so that could affect things.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think to your first point, you've had we've had Josh Da Silva, obviously coming back from being dropped from the West Indies side, has reacted well in a positive manner, piled on the runs. Jason Mohammed, the first 3 or 4 rounds of this season, piling on the runs as well. Then they've also been supported by, Cooper, Cephas Cooper opening, Amir Jangu. Even in this one where Da Silva Mohammed didn't score, Camille Poran, who was playing for CCC before, came in, scored a 60 in the innings Trinidad batted. So as you said, someone has always stepped up, and that's usually a hallmark of, a title-winning side. When things aren't going well with certain players, another player will step up, and it does seem to be a good collective. And that's a credit to Ryan Emmerich, because let's not forget David Furlong was the coach up until the first game and then abruptly resigned after that first game. So Ryan Emmerich, who served as assistant coach for the last few years, he's taken over and he's carried on that sort of momentum and built them on this charge towards a title-winning campaign. However, as you said, the caveat is, as we saw at the Kensington Oval, Jayden Seales and Anderson Phillip, both West Indian internationals, we saw what havoc they caused. However, as it stands, Mash, that was their last regional game. They go to the first round of county games in England is the 4th of April, which clashes with round 6 in West Indies. So if Seales and Phillip aren't playing, that massively dents their title hopes. For me, bearing in mind Guyana only lose Gudakesh Moti to the PSL, I think. Other than that, Guyana will have the same cohort of players. Guyana have the know-how and experience, of having won titles in the lead up for this. So I don't know how many, 8 of the last 10, I think, maybe something along those lines. They've Guyana experienced, title winning side. It could all just be too much for Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm wondering, this is a long shot, but I'm wondering if there will be a request that they could skip 1 or 2 of their county matches to finish off this regional season. It depends. I think it's unlikely because the English county cricket is such a big thing and important for their development. But it also wouldn't surprise me. Trinidad's first potential title in 20 years. Will there be a request, from Jayden Seales or Anderson Phillip or both of them to say to their counties, look, we're signed up for, this X amount of games. Could we at least play 1 or 2 rounds back home in Trinidad to try and help us win the title? So it'd be interesting to see what happens. I think it's unlikely. But if Seales and Phillip aren't in the side for the next 2 rounds, I think that massively swings things in Guyana's favour.
Yeah, I think because Jamaica are down horrendous, I can see a TNT side even without Phillips and Seales just spinning down Jamaica at home in the red ball game anyway. So I can see Trinidad getting to the last game still in contention. So Trinidad's best hope is that Guyana don't beat Leeward Islands, which then gives them a bit of a buffer going into that final game if they beat Jamaica. But I mean, we shall see. But before we move on, we should talk about Barbados. You mentioned it at the top. Barbados was stacked their team with pure West Indian internationals. Obviously, Craig, whether white ball or red ball, Craig's an international, Roston's an international, Shay's an international, Jason, Matthew Ford, Kimar Roach, Jamel Warrican, all established. Zach McCaskey, he's not got a test cap, but he's been in the squads. So the whole team basically are internationals. And somebody made a good point to me. Well, made a point. Whether it's a good point or not, I'll let people in the comments decide. But if that team, that Barbados team, we recognize as probably the most stacked international side in the regional competition, and they didn't even get spinned down. They got done by sheer pace, right? And not just pace for pace sake, like controlled, disciplined pace with subtle seam movement, etc. Right? So what then should we expect, Santokie, when Stark, Cummins, Hazelwood and Co. turn up with Australia? Because respectfully, if Seales, Phillip and Joshua James are doing that to some of our most seasoned batters in the region, what should we expect the Australians are going to do?
It's going to be pandemonium out here, man. I don't know if you're in Barbados, if you want to book your ticket for day 3 at this point in time. If we lay on the same pitch with those bowlers coming, but Mash, it's interesting because let's talk about Hope, because obviously Hope's first class game in 2 years. I think the last time he played was 2023. Interestingly enough, he kept wicket and he batted at number 6. So you'd expect Hope, if he was looking to come back into the West Indies side, he would want to accumulate the runs and come in at 3 or 4. Do you think Sammy's made the call and said, listen, we want you to come back in as a wicketkeeper, back further down? Would it have been Hope's request? Because for me, I expected him, when he was named in the Barbados side, to just come in as a top order batter. I didn't expect him to bat as low down at 6 and keep wicket. What's your sort of take and analysis on that move?
I refuse to believe that has been done without Darren Sammy having a say in it. Remember, we're talking about the ODI captain here. And we're talking about a guy who has completely reinvented the way he goes about playing T20 cricket. You mean to tell me that someone who's used to batting 4 and sometimes even opening in the past in ODI cricket, and when he last played Test cricket, was batting at 3, has opened in the past, has batted at 4. You mean to say that he's randomly now just decided I'll take, because it's not even just batting at 6, Santokie, it's taking the gloves as well. I know he did it for Yorkshire when he had the stint in county cricket a few seasons ago, but I think it's more significant that he took the gloves rather than he batted 6. So I have to assume that some kind of conversation or discussion has gone on. Does that mean that we should expect to see Shai Hope in the West Indies Test squad for Australia? No. Does it mean we should expect to see Shai Hope in the West Indies Test squad before this year is out? Yes. When and if he comes in, does that mean we're earmarking him? Because if he is batting 6, Santokie, let's just say hypothetically, a conversation has taken place between him and Darren Sammy. I would imagine if a conversation has taken place, that it's gone something like this. Shai, the last time you played Test cricket, you were put in at number 3 and you struggled against the moving red ball. Obviously, if you bat 3 or 4 for the West Indies, you're basically opening, right? So you struggled coming in at 3 and 4. You face the new ball early. It moves about. You've been kind of caught hopping on the crease, etc. So now when you come in for your next reinvention, you'll come in later on. The ball's likely to be, even though it's still West Indies and we're down bad, you're more likely to face an older ball, which will play to your strengths. You can manipulate it more and accumulate lower on. I can see a conversation having taken place like that. The only question for me, Santokie, is does that indicate, let's just say that happened, does that indicate that they would move Tevin Imlach to be a pure batter who, let's not forget, Imlach's not even keeping for Guyana too tough. So it's not, people get in the comments and go, no, Imlach's the keeper, but Imlach ain't even keeping for Guyana. And actually the season that Imlach got called up for West Indies, I think he'd only kept wicket for like 2 out of the however many games. So it's not like Imlach has been keeping tons and tons and tons and tons, and we have to be wedded to the idea of Imlach being a wicket keeper. You get to be a straight batter.
Yeah, that would be a big shuffle for me. If you called up Hope, because bearing in mind, Hope has a PSL deal with Molten Sultans, I think. So this was Hope's only appearance in the regional season. He only kept wicket for 1 innings because Trinidad and Tobago only batted once. So if you are picking Hope for the next series against Australia, you're basically picking him off no real recent sort of back catalogue of red ball cricket other than this sort of one and a half day game, first class game. So it's interesting to me that Hope didn't play in the 4th round. I'm not sure why. Maybe he had an injury issue or something like that.
But Santokie, he might play. I think he might play the next round, because the PSL doesn't start till the first game in PSL for his team is the 12th of April. The next round for the championship is from the 2nd of April to the 5th of April. So it's plausible. It's plausible that he plays the next round,
Yeah, it's plausible. I mean, yeah, it could very well be, he's definitely been in contact with Sammy. Like you said, I refuse to believe he wouldn't have consulted Sammy. If you're white ball captain, you're in constant communication with Sammy anyway. It would have come up surely, what about the Test team? What's going on? What would you like to see from me in the regional game? So it's plausible he could play the next round. However, also, it's a big bag in the PSL, big money bag. So you don't know whether he'd want to risk it playing in front of 5 fans in the next round and risk an injury ahead of the PSL. So it's up to kind of Shai Hope. If he does play the next round, bearing in mind how close it is to PSL, 100% then he's been told he's going to be in the Test side.
That's my point. Yeah, exactly. And I also think the same for, did Brandon King get a PSL deal? I can't remember.
I don't think he did.
Did he not? Let me just double check that. Did Brandon get one? PSL, Brandon King.
I don't think he did because I can't see
I don't think he did either.
I know the PSL, off the top of my head, it wasn't that many. So it was Jason Holder, Gudakesh Moti, Shai Hope, and Alzari Joseph were the ones that I remember. And maybe Johnson Charles. They were the 5 sort of West Indians.
Okay, so you would imagine that King plays the next round as well. But I'm with you. If Hope doesn't fly to Pakistan earlier and plays the next round, I have to assume some conversation has gone on. I have to.
Yeah.
I have to, because he doesn't have to play this competition.
Exactly.
So Anyways, let's move on because we've spent quite a bit of time on that particular game. Move into Guyana. So Guyana played. Who did they play again? I can't remember. Windward Islands. Yeah. So Guyana played Windward Islands, and the thing is, the first day of that game was heavily affected by rain.
Yeah.
The second day of that game was heavily affected by rain, and Guyana still won it in 3 days. So Windward Islands have been down horrendous the whole tournament. So if we just recap that for people, Windward's batted first, made 213. Guyana made 324 in response. Windward's came back again, made a down bad 135, leaving Guyana 28 runs to win. Now, first things first, Santokie, let me just read these to you and you tell me your reaction to this. In this particular match, Kavem Hodge scored 17. Ali Kathane scored 39. That was in the first innings. In the second innings, Kavem Hodge scored 40. Ali Kathane scored 18. I've got to ask a question, Santokie. Are either one of those two at risk? Based on what we've just discussed about Shai Hope and all of that, and possibly Brandon King, are either of those two at risk? If I know Hodge scored 120 odd in that first round, but he ain't done much since, right? Yeah. Athanase hasn't done anything. Are either two of them at risk, you think, from being replaced?
Yeah, I think they definitely both are at risk. Just because of their recent, test form, and then you'd imagine See, this is the thing. Traditionally, you'd imagine, all right, you're not doing well in Test cricket, like Bonner a few years ago. You have to go to the regional ones, and if you put up runs, you'll be persevered with in the test side. If not, then there's a chance you get dropped. However, with Sammy, if it's a case of, all right, let's say, so Hope didn't score any runs in any significant ones in this match. If the next round he doesn't, but he still gets picked because he played those 2 games. At the same time, surely it's a contradiction to drop a Hodge or Athanase and say, it's because, they weren't looking good in the first class season. It depends on how Sammy wants to use this first class season as a basis. But I would say, looking at it in the traditional way of they haven't scored significant runs in the first class season, they're definitely both at risk, Mash. I think Hodge probably more so than Athanase. So I think it is a big risk. But again, because of this whole Sammy era, whether we're sort of overhyping how much of a drastic change he'll make. But at the moment, I would say there's not really any... You can't really predict what's going to happen when he announces this squad in July and what's he going to base it off exactly. But on paper, yeah, definitely both at risk.
16 of the 20 Windward Islands wickets that fell to Gudakesh Motian for Sammy Permo.
Listen, like them... What's the horror film, the Freddy Krueger one, Nightmare on Elm Street, boy? It's like Nightmare at Providence. You come Providence... Someone's going to get you, man. Pamoor's going to spin you. Flipping, Gudakesh Motian's going to spin you. If they don't get you, Kevin Sinclair will get you. So
So actually, for adding Kevin Sinclair, 18 of the 20 wickets fell to spin. so Windward's got spin down truly by the Guyanese team. So, and this is what I'm saying, Santokie, the only thing that possibly could work against Guyana winning it, because I think they're favourites to win it, is their last 2 games are away. However, it's the Leewards one which is more of an interest to me than Trinidad, because you have to assume that Guyana will be able to spin at wherever the Trinidad game, Port of Spain, Queen's Park Oval. You'd assume they'll be able to spin down in the final game, but the Leewards one, I don't know. I don't know with the
Leewards are this season. Leewards have been that type of side. They're so inconsistent, but on their day, because of the talent they have in the side, you never know what they're going to do. So I think that could be a massive obstacle for Guyana. So if we move Mash to the Leeward Islands game.
Hold on, before you go to that one, just to add to people, because somebody will say, why didn't you mention it? Imlach batted 4 for Guyana. He did keep wicket and he scored 113, which I believe is his 2nd century of the competition. So just have to praise Tevin Imlach, because again, when you come back from international duty, you're supposed to beat down regional bowlers and make runs. So that's his 2nd century for Tevin Imlach. Should just point out.
Yeah, I think with that, Imlach's basically would have made up Sammy's mind. He can't be dropped from the next test side, because he's done what he needed to do in Pakistan. He put on the runs in the regional season. But it's an interesting dynamic, because as much as we talked about Hope coming in as someone who's a potential batter or wicketkeeper, Josh De Silva's also parred on the runs as well since he's come back. So you've kind of got a little race going on between these guys as to who's going to make that test side, which is good. It's good to have these options at your disposal if you're Darren Sammy. So let's move on quickly to the Leeward Island Hurricanes. So they defeated CCC by a massive 373 runs. Justin Graves mashing the first innings 104. And then, someone you in particular has talked a lot about in recent months, maybe recent years, Joel Andrew, 122 off 139 balls. He's kind of been known in recent times for his attacking sort of play. But Mash, is this just realigning just how good Joel Andrew can be? How old is he now? He's still only 18, I believe.
Yeah. Do you know what, Santokie?
Yeah.
I wish BBC Test Match Special. I wish we had a recording of when you and I went on Test Match Special, because that was a year ago now. A year ago, because people will think we're just making it up. But a year ago, we went on Test Match Special, and Jonathan Agnew asked us, who's the West Indian player that everyone should look out for? And we said Joel Andrew. That's a year ago. He was a 17-year-old Ute man back then. And we said, watch out for Joel Andrew. He's the next one. And that doesn't mean that we're saying because he scored 122 against down bad CCC that justifies everything. But to put in perspective, Santokie, because I think he got a 65 in the second innings.
Just like 58 balls and 58 balls.
He's now the fourth highest run scorer in this year's competition with 390 runs. We're talking about an 18-year-old Ute man, right? Daryl Bartley, good friend of the podcast, did a tweet during this match, which I thought was quite pertinent. Obviously, Dario's from Antigua, Joel Andrews from Antigua. And Dario said, I don't even think Joel realizes how good he is. That's the most frightening thing. My man's hitting 122 just on a calm one as an 18-year-old, and he's nowhere near reaching his full potential. But here's the thing I want to say about Joel Andrews, Santokie. I think Cricket West Indies should sign him to a 5-year contract now.
But he ain't signing that.
No, of course, right, exactly. So he's not going to sign that. But let's now be realistic, because he's not signing the 5-year contract. Do you think if we went to Joel Andrew now and said, listen, Joel, obviously we're not going to try and prevent you going on the franchise circuit, because clearly he's going to be in demand very, very soon, but sign this 3-year contract. Because multi-year contracts now exist. Would you, I think, and I'm not being stupid here, I'd offer him a multi-year contract. Why not?
Yeah.
Because you're showing him that, boy, you're a possible generational talent, so we're just giving you the contract from now.
Yeah, it makes sense. And that's the whole purpose of multi-contract kind of deals, to kind of secure young talent. But Mash, I know you're going to be shaking your head at this one, but Sammy's obviously talked about, his brand of cricket and having certain players fit in a position. I think in his head, his wicketkeeper coming at number 6, he'll want someone, who can attack, who can counter-attack the opposition coming later down the line. You've had Joel Andrew, scoring, piling on the runs, 122, 65 of just 58 balls in the second innings when Leeward's needed quick runs. Sammy's given Joel Andrew his maiden ODI call-up. Do you think there's going to be a temptation for Sammy to dial that number up for the Australia series and say, look?
Okay, the answer is no. But if you're saying to me, do I think Joel Andrew will make his Test debut before this time next year? The answer is yes. I don't. Okay, maybe I shouldn't say that, because people are going to get in the comments and go, but you don't think Kevlon Anderson should, so why should Joel Andrew? But I think people need to understand that Joel Andrew's clearly a generational talent. We didn't wait around for Jaden Seals. Jaden Seals was a 19-year-old Ute man when we debuted him, because everyone recognised that Jaden was a generational talent. How young is too young for Joel Andrew, Santokie?
I think now is definitely too young. Jaden Seals is a good example, because he played Test cricket and then he got injured for a while and was on and off. It took him about 3 years to kind of get back into consistently playing full fitness. And I also think it's slightly different with a bowler, because you're kind of you can go off that raw ability and have that. If you've got that pace, the fundamentals are there. I think with a batter, Joel Andrew coming in as a batter, there's a lot more he can learn than what he can do now. So I think holding him back 2 or 3 years, maybe play 18 cricket, try and get him some sort of deals playing red ball cricket in other countries or something along those, putting him in camps and then unleashing him when he's like 22, 23.
What about white ball though? Are you saying that for white ball cricket as well, or would you debut him in T20, for example?
Yeah, I would have that because I just think he's obviously clearly got the raw talents, and he's got something about him. And I think the fact he's been given his white ball debut already, you can kind of play him here and there in bilateral series when there's not as much pressure as, you know, the intensity of a 5-day test match. So yeah, I think we should hold him back in Test cricket at least for 2 years. Surely, come on, man. But this being West Indies cricket, if we put him in for the A-team tour against South Africa and he scores big runs, I don't think Sammy has a choice. I think you're going to, because then Sammy, if we get hammered against Australia, which is still very likely because Australia are one of the best teams in the world at Test cricket, and Sammy hasn't picked Jewel Andrew based on his form and what he might do in the A-team tour, pressure will be on Sammy. Why didn't you call him up? So there's the temptation, you know, Mash. I agree with you. I think within the next year, he'll definitely make his Test debut, regardless of sort of his age and everything. But it also would not surprise me, this being West Indies cricket, if we saw him at the Kensington Oval lining up against Stark and Cummins. Can you imagine 50 for 5, you know, and 18-year-old Jewel Andrew comes out?
Anyways, we watched this space. A quick shout out to
Shamar Holder.
Shamar Holder took a 5. Yeah, he took 8 wickets in the match. Akeem Jordan took 6, and then with when CCC came along, Alzari took 6 for 35 against CCC, and then I think in their second innings, I think Shane Thomas took a 5-fer. Let me just double check that. Shane Thomas took 5 for 36. So and Alzari took another 3. So it was a match for pacers. Alzari and O'Shane running through CCC in essence, and quickly handing Leeward Islands the victory. Now, it's worth pointing out, so that match was played at North Sound, and pretty much the majority of the wickets in that match fell to pacers, right? Let me just double check, Santokie, where Leeward Islands versus Guyana is taking place, because there's an argument I'm sure you can tell the argument I'm going to bring if this is the case, right? So so they're not. Leeward Islands versus Guyana is being played at Warner Park. Yeah. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Warner Park has been a runs fest so far in. Yeah, Warner Park was the game where Leeward Islands drew with Trinidad 4-3-3, 529 for 5. I think that's where Jason Mohammed might have scored the double century or something.
Yeah, it was.
So, yeah, Guyana are going to have to go some, assuming it's still a runs fest venue. Guyana are going to have to go some to spin them down in that kind of venue. How many games you got left? One more game?
Yeah, one more game. So it was Jamaica against West Indies Academy. And in the end, it was another victory than I would have predicted for Jamaica. They won by 40 runs, having set West Indies Academy 355 to win in the 4th innings. And West Indies Academy hit 315. So almost an almighty fumble from Jamaica Scorpions. Just looking through the innings. First inning, Jamaica, 375 all out, headlined by John Campbell Mash. His return to cricket, 101. Again, consistently piling on the runs. You shared an article earlier on our handle with the Jamaica Observer where he said he's not focused on international cricket. He's just focused on doing what's best for the Jamaica Scorpions team. Mash, surely that's a PR line. Surely in the back of Campbell's head, he's thinking, I might have a chance of getting into this West Indies side come the summer.
It's worth reminding people that Campbell and Brathwaite opened together at age group level, at under 19 level. I unless I'm mistaken, Craig trusts John Campbell. And again, I remind people, the year that Campbell got banned, he was averaging 35 in that calendar year for the West Indies. So I would assume, Santokie, and what I would possibly recommend, Cephas Cooper notwithstanding, I would pick Campbell and Machel Louis for the A-team series versus South Africa. And then it kind of becomes a bit of a shootout. Whoever does best in that series is the person that ends up partnering Craig. Would you do that? I think that's a fair enough way to do it.
Yeah, remember we said it was a shootout for the England series between Machel Louis and McCaskey. And then we saw them both playing the warm-up match. And Machel Louis clearly looked like he was more suited for the conditions, the swinging conditions in England. And after the first day of that match, we said, Machel Louis is going to get called up for Lords. But I do believe that was a shootout as well. So I think we're going to see a shootout at the moment. And it's interesting, Mash, because John Campbell was injured in the second innings. He didn't bat. He came into bat at 7, I think, later on when they needed runs. But Brandon King opened and scored 77. So again, Brandon King showing his versatility in terms of positioning and that he's able to kind of score some significant runs in the regional season. So a lot of questions there for Sammy. And just shout out to West Indies Academy, Joshua Bishop, took 5-wicket haul in Jamaica's second innings, and then 49 coming in at number 7. The real Gary Sobers out here, the regional season, with the wickets, with the runs. Shout out Joshua Bishop. He's someone who's definitely going to be playing 18 cricket. I think
100%.
That's without doubt. And it'd be interesting to see how he can push on because he's still young. Playing for the West Indies Academy, as you said on previous episode, I think next season is the season where he makes it into an actual territorial franchise rather than playing for West Indies Academy. He's been a consistent standout for them and really impressive. So shout out Joshua Bishop. But in the end, Jamaica, scraped through with a 40 win. 40
Just
run.
a quick shout out as well for Carl and Bowen Tuckett. I think he got 2 50s, and I think he scored a century earlier on in the tournament as well. So I look at someone like Carl and Bowen Tuckett, and I'm like, okay, he's a 21-year-old youth man in the academy. Do Leewoods call him up next year? Make him wicket keeper, make Jewel Andrew play as a straight batter? It's just things that some of them. But do you know what, Santokie? And I know the academy haven't beaten anyone, but we have to be this. I need to remind people that we need to be grateful the academy exists, because if the academy wasn't there right now, what's Carlin Bowen Tuckett doing? How is his game developing at the pace it looks like it's current? Is Joshua Bishop's game developing at the pace it's currently developing? Because without the academy, Bishop's just not playing because there's no one. There's none of the other franchises are picking him up. So he would have been Joshua Bishop. Ultimately, would have ended up being a 19 to 24-year-old who just disappears into the abyss because there's no one to play for. So yes, the academy aren't winning any games, but I think we need to look at the bigger picture here of how they're playing or filling a critical role in giving these youth men some game time, so that the argument being, Santokie, that now these youth men have got game time, hopefully for some of these youth men like Bishop and Orgeese and Bowen Tuckett, by the time they get to 28, 29, which is the usual time when our players mature, technically these academy guys should be maturing at 25, 26 because they've got more game time at a younger age than our traditional youth men ever got. If you see what I mean. Yeah,
I agree. I think the West Indies Academy has shown sort of their purpose, and we should be developing these youngsters better than we have with the previous generation who sort of had that gap. Question mark to me still remain over CCC. I think they're still sort of muddled in terms of, Camille Pooran was playing for them last round, and then he's playing for Trinidad this round. Shamal Holder got loaned out from Barbados to CCC. Then they've got a random sprinkling of veteran players, Akeem Jordan's in there, Kieran Powell's at the moment. Sort of all of a muddle. You don't really know where they're going. My theory is, well, not really a theory, but it seems like CCC are in at the moment, so we have an even 8 teams. So the rounds can be played at the same time. Because that's the only reason. I don't otherwise see what benefit CCC is having on this tournament. And we said that in previous years as well. It sort of seems it's just a random array of players who happen to be available in the region, with a few veteran players there as well. And even some of the guys who were there last year, like Shane Dowitch, Shamar Brooks, we don't know where they've gone, and kind of it's all just been a bit strange with CCC. But West Indies Academy have definitely been beneficial to have in the regional season. So, Mash, that's the end of round 5. As always, we're reviewing every round. We have a short break now, I think 2 weeks, until the next round resumes on Wednesday, the 2nd of April. As always, we'll be back to kind of dissect that and look at who's standing out and see how the table stands after the penultimate round between Guyana and Trinidad. Definitely promises to be exciting. As always, we're keeping the content quick and fast, on the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. So as many of you will have seen, West Indies have announced sort of the retained players for the Emerging Players Tournament. Is that what it's called? What's the tournament? The official name?
The West Indies Breakout League.
Breakout League. So we'll be sure to, have a preview or analyze sort of where that's going. And that also gives a lot of these players who have been playing the Red Bull season an opportunity to have finally some proper experience in T20 cricket, those who haven't been getting that CPL experience. So we're looking forward to that. So as always, even though IPL, PSL starts, we'll be keeping it consistent with the regional content, Caribbean Cricket Podcast by the fans, for the fans. Number 1 podcast out there, despite what other channels may be saying at the moment. And as always, as I said, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow us Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, patreon.com/CaribCricket. If you can donate, we're on Facebook as well. I think that's everything, Mash.
Pretty much. And
everything.
listen, people, just put in Google Caribbean Cricket Podcast and you'll find everything. But but we'll be back very soon. And actually, there is an episode that I don't know if we'll record it this week, but look out for it. For those who don't know, Johnny Grave is now CEO at Major League Cricket. So spoke to Johnny today. He's going to come on the podcast and talk to us about his change from Cricket West Indies to Major League Cricket and what that's all about. So look out for that episode as well. Drop in very, very soon. But people, we're out. We'll see you all very, very soon.
West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast. West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast.